Hey everyone, and welcome to another video, and today we're taking a look at the EufyCam E330. This is their professional wired security camera system with 24/7 smart protection. So taking a look at the actual packaging itself, on the box itself you do get some information in terms of what kind of features this system incorporates. So these are 4K cameras, they are both wired, so it's 24/7 power, and you do get some AI features built in with the actual home base setup as well. Towards the bottom of the box you do get some details in terms of what's included. So you do get the home base 3, you get two E330 Eufy cams, you get a network cable, you get the power adapter for the actual home base itself, you also get a power adapter for each camera, you get some fixing screws as well as the positioning stickers, you get the quick start, some cable clips, some cable ties, you get these silicone covers to actually protect the cables, provide water resistance, and then you get the storage drive screw pack as well if you want to add in any additional hard drives into the actual home base 3 itself. Taking a look at the actual cameras themselves, as you can see, these are slimmed down versions of some of the previous cameras that I've reviewed on the channel from Eufy. Both of these do have built-in spotlights. They also have colored night vision as well, so you do have some additional functionality there as well. These both have a much wider angle compared to the existing cameras that I've actually used from Eufy, and I'll show you that a little later on when I actually give you some of the samples. Here you can see everything laid out, and you can see you're basically getting two lots of everything for each camera, and then you also get the separate power adapter for the home base. One thing I do like is that Eufy do include all of the adapter types for the plugs. I think that's a really nice touch because it saves you having to use any additional adapters if you do use a different type of plug. So for me here in the UK, obviously we use 3-pin plugs, and it means that I can still use the original power adapter and not have to have an additional adapter on top of that. Another thing you can see just below there is the little rubber rings. These are for protecting the actual water seal of the connection between the power adapter and the cable that comes from the camera itself, if you did need to actually route this outside and have that connection outside. I did test it, and basically no water will get in that. I've had issues in the past with water ingress, and I don't think that's going to be an issue here. Here you can see the actual home base itself, and if you take the lid off you can see where you would actually access and install any additional drives that you might have. On the back of the camera you do have a little section where originally it comes sealed up, so that's where you've got your sync button, but if you did want to add a memory card, then this is where you would actually remove two screws and insert it in there. Once again, that is to waterproof the actual connection. And at the bottom you can see how the cable is actually routed. Now on the side of the actual mount you do have two screws, and you can actually undo those and rotate which side the actual cable comes out. So if you don't want the cable coming out on the side, you can rotate that and have it coming out the back. And you can also use that to change the angle of the mount. If you did want to actually install the mount upside down, for example, then in order to get the full rotation and movement, that extra screw does enable you to do that. Here you can see the actual cable itself is just a standard connection, so you could probably find additional adapters or cables in terms of extensions if that was needed. And the connection is nice and snug on its own, but once you actually install the waterproof seal over the top of it, you're definitely not going to have any problems with water ingress on this. Here you can see where I've demoed with the water seal installed, and you can see it covers the entire connection and it is pretty tight, so you're not going to have any problems with water getting in there. Coming on to the actual setup, so it's pretty simple. You just go to the 24/7 Pro camera in the app. You follow the on-screen instructions in the app, so you do press the sync button for around 2 seconds. You'll get a beep, you'll get some flashing lights, and as long as you're within distance of the home base, then it will sync up quite quickly. Now, one thing to note, I did pair this to an existing home base, so for me it was a bit quicker. For you, you might need to additionally add the home base first, and then obviously install any cameras and sync them to that in the process. Once installed, if you did want to obviously check your signal strength and everything, you can do that. Because of where I was installing this, I knew I wasn't going to have any issues with it. And here you can see it's set up and working. Do make sure that you update the cameras, because there is a firmware for me straight away that was waiting. And here you can see the first samples of the actual cameras. Now I didn't install these permanently because obviously these are wired, I did want to actually change the location, because as you can see from this image, this is a much wider angle lens, and because of that I'm getting probably a third of the picture is just sky, which looks really nice. And with the detail and the clarity of the image, you can see it looks pretty good, but I think I'm wasting a lot of the sort of area of the actual picture. So I will be installing these in a separate location, but in order to do that I need to actually change the angle of it. But I wanted to obviously get the testing done, so for the testing I did actually just mount these as close to the angle of my existing cameras that I could actually get. It's never going to be exactly the same, because as I said, these are such a wide angle that it's basically capturing right from one side of the street to almost the opposite side of my street. Whereas my existing cameras, even the wide angle lens ones, don't capture this much. Now coming on to the night shots, and as you can see, this is just after sunset, so it's not fully dark in this particular image. I will show you a proper night shot a little later on, but this is the mode that I would actually recommend that you actually keep it in from my personal perspective anyway. I think it works a lot better if you actually keep it on the color night vision rather than using the black and white, which I've done on other cameras, because they would clash and maybe not perform as well. Whereas with these, I think they do perform better if you do leave them in color night vision as opposed to the black and white. This is the second camera that you're seeing now, so this is the opposite side, and as I mentioned, you're seeing so much of the street that I feel like it's just a bit of a waste in the location where it's mounted at the moment. In terms of testing it out and everything, obviously it does have the app functionality, so because this is 24/7 recording, it does show up in the app. Now one thing about the app is it will show you, obviously you can scroll through it, you can go through the timeline and you can search for clips, but it will only save however you have the camera set. So if you set it to record just people and vehicles, then it will only save those particular recordings. You can still go through the timeline and view other instances, but it doesn't necessarily give you the option straight away to download that clip. Here you can see what the actual interface looks like. So you do have your timeline, and then you have any instances where it's actually recorded, highlighted, and anything where there's basically just nothing happening, it will just be the sort of dull color. The gray, I believe, is when I actually disconnected the camera straight after the initial testing. So any gray areas should be the actual parts where the camera is offline, which once you're set up, it shouldn't really happen beyond your initial setup, or unless you unplug these yourself. Now, no product is perfect, and as always, I will highlight all the issues that I've had with these to you in my videos. So the biggest issue for me personally is in the names. So these are called the E330 Professional. Now for me, professional means that something where you can install it, and whilst these aren't advertised for being commercial use, professional suggests that. Now for me, the biggest drawback of this is the frame rate, and this is something that I wish manufacturers of security cameras would all just get together and kind of rectify this one issue, and that is low frame rates. So if you want to capture something when it comes to fast moving objects, when you're trying to capture a person or something like that, more so than the actual resolution, the frame rate is more important. So a 30 FPS or a 40 or 50, or if it can even reach there, a 60 FPS video will look a lot clearer even in 1080p compared to a 4K security image in 15 FPS. The reason for that is when somebody is moving, those pixels aren't necessarily capturing in the same way. So yes, static details will look really clear, as you can see from the actual video clips. But the problem is when somebody is moving, if they were to move at any sort of pace at all, unless they're previously in your sort of AI brain that's part of the EufyCam 3, where you've identified people, you're not necessarily going to be able to capture their faces very well. That's something that I wish all of the manufacturers would get together. This, I don't know if something that Eufy can actually rectify, because this is a powered camera. There's no need for it to actually reduce down the actual frame rate. So if they could increase that frame rate to even double what it is, so even to 30 FPS, you'll probably find that the recordings that you end up getting of people in particular will be a lot clearer. Any details that you find in the image that you're trying to focus in on will be a lot more clearer. Now, one thing that I didn't necessarily make a clip of, but in the app you do, obviously with this being a 4K camera, you do have the option for optical zoom down to 1080p. So it will optically zoom in on the actual sensor itself and reduce down to 1080p. I did test this in the app, but when you're actually recording, it still records your 4K image. So it doesn't necessarily follow that whilst you're actually recording. But in the app itself, you can actually zoom in, pinch to zoom, and it will zoom in on the image up to obviously 4x, and taking it down to a 1080p image. Whether or not that actually does anything different in comparison to just recording the clip and then zooming in manually, I don't know, but it does give you that option whilst you're actually viewing the feed live to be able to actually zoom in and focus in on any details that you have. Okay, so overall, I'm not the biggest fan of fully wide cameras because it just means a lot more wiring, a lot more cabling, and in particular these, with them being just standard plugs rather than a PoE system where you'd have just a single Ethernet cable, it does mean a lot more headache. But on the flip side, it does also give you a lot more functionality. And if you're serious about security and you actually want some cameras for not just monitoring but to try and protect your premises, then obviously a wide system is the only way to go, because you need that 24/7 recording just in case the actual motion detection doesn't pick up either fast enough or just misses a incident altogether. So that's where having 24/7 power is important, and especially if you're in the UK and you, with the weather we have, if you're reliant on solar panels to charge up cameras, then you'll probably find that you are struggling as well, as I have with some of the other Eufy cameras that I've got. A lot of them I end up charging them 2-3 times a year, even when they have solar panels built in or hooked up to them. So with that, obviously being fully powered, this is a much better option. It's for you guys out there to decide what is the best solution for you. For me personally, I still prefer battery powered cameras, but the extra functionality that you get from a wired camera, it will always surpass in terms of actual security. So in my opinion, if you are looking for a decent system with easy recording, easy playback, the app is pretty simple to use, generally works quite well. Unfortunately, it doesn't have HomeKit support, but I'm not expecting that to go forward on any of these cameras because HomeKit is still limited to 1080p. But for everything else, it works pretty good. My testing, I never really had any issues with it. No big problems, nothing like that. So on that side of things, it was positive. I just need to get it installed in a better location where I actually make use of that wider angle. Mine are also quite high. These are level with the first floor window, so I will probably mount these slightly lower. I think the recommended height is anything above 2 meters to be able to utilize the actual sensor and the wide angle lens properly. It's a good option for anybody out there looking for them. I will have links in the description below for anybody that's interested. If you have any questions, drop them in the comment section below. If I can't answer them myself, I'll try and get onto Eufy to see if I can get an answer for you. If you haven't already done so, please do subscribe and turn on notifications, and I'd really appreciate if you can give this video a thumbs up. And until the next one, thanks very much for watching.